Hi everyone. Um, I'm Giri Prakash from the Federal, and in this episode, I'm introing the well-known author, Mr. V Sudarshan. Mr. Sudarshan has written around seven books so far, and out of that, I assume uh, most of them are fiction. And we are going to talk about the latest one, which is called The Dead End, The Minister, the CBI, and the Murder That Wasn't. Welcome to the episode, Sudarshan.
Hello. Hi, Giri. Thanks.
Hi. Let me tell you a bit about this book, and then we'll tell you a bit about Sudarshan as well. And this book is about the infamous Rashid murder case that happened during the late 80s. And it involves, as the book says, a cabinet minister in the then Ramakrishna Hegde government. It involves the CBI, and it also involves a very prominent educational institution, which I assume doesn't exist anymore. And yeah. So there is this lawyer from Kerala who just walks in straight into this entire um, the issue that's happening between the state government and this college and the minister, and then he eventually gets killed or rather murdered. So very interesting book, unputdownable and very racy, and I must credit the author for that. Let me
Thank
tell you
you.
about the author himself. Sudarshan has written seven books, and he was formerly with the Pioneer newspaper as the Foreign Affairs editor. Then he moved to the Outlook as the Foreign Affairs editor, and later went on to become the editor of Indian Express Madurai. After that, he moved to the Hindu newspaper as the resident editor of the Delhi edition. Later, uh, he launched himself into this career, and I think he had already written a few books. And now this book is in front of us. So, Sudarshan, welcome to the episode. Let me first ask you about you have written in the book how what made you write this book. But more than that, um, as far as this book is concerned, it's, I assume, the most controversial of the books that you have written so far.
Yes,
You agree
without
with that?
doubt. But without doubt, it is a very touchy subject, and uh, uh, and
Hmm.
the publishers had their legal department go through it with a fine-tooth comb before they uh, accepted the manuscript. And
Hmm.
it also helped that part of the Madras judiciary also kind of backed this project uh, through Mr. Agutami. And um,
Hmm.
so it is a ambitious project that brings to life something that happened in the 80s, late 80s. Coincidentally, it broke almost soon after I joined the profession, and it was broken by the paper that I used to work for, but the Bangalore edition of the paper. And it made page one.
Hmm.
And one of the things about a newspaper experience is that the story stays with you. I would say that the if I were to draw a contemporary equivalence, I would say this is as headline grabbing those days as the Arushi murder case was, let's say, or something that uh, that preoccupied us in terms of newspaper reading. And those days, newspapers were the only thing that was there. There was no TV. There was no uh, other media in which news like this could be dispersed. So yes, it is, and it deals with a very controversial subject. I think this is the first time in the history of this country that a home minister was charged or rather accused of having something to do with a murder. And the court document shows there were 18 accused, 6 of them policemen, most of them ruffians, rowdies, pimps, and other very, very questionable characters. And I think I would like to say that when I was writing this book, the one thing that occupied the back of my mind was Roman Polanski's movie called Chinatown. It's I think it was made in the mid-70s, and it has got Jack Nicholson as the lead character, and I think John Huston also plays in it. And the ending of that movie, where Jack Nicholson's character is told, "Go home, Jake. This is Chinatown. Forget it." I mean, at some level, the noir of the movie kind of seeped into my mind, and you will see instances of it abounding in this.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Coincidentally, I also started my career around the same time you started, and I was with the Bangalore edition of Indian Express when they broke the story. So I was obviously very curious, and almost the whole of Bangalore was very curious about what was happening, because perhaps this was the first time that we could actually see a nexus between politicians and the cops, and which was very evident. Most of us knew who was the person behind the murder of Rashid, and but obviously none of us could talk about it or write about it, because the fact is that there weren't enough documents to support it, or it was way too controversial. And we also realized that Ramakrishna Hegde came with this very clean image of politicians, and the people there in Karnataka elected him for that he was not corrupt, he was very clean, and stuff like that. So one could not in any way connect this murder case with him, though we actually could see that one of his decisions actually led to it, though he may not have ever realized it. That's what the book says, right? Regarding allowing Mr. Jalapa, the Home Minister, to actually take away the license granted to one educational institution and to give it to him. That actually resulted in all these cases, all this issue. But for me, the most important thing here is that in this book, you have actually talked about how he was murdered, how this particular minister ended up with the CBI officer's house and talked to him. Not only that, one of the chapters also talks about how this person actually sees the body, and all the entire minute details about it. And didn't that lead to any kind of situation for you where I mean, see the minister is dead and gone, the chief minister is dead and gone. Obviously, Rashid is no longer there, but some of these do come back to haunt a lot of people when they start discussing it. And your book actually goes there right in and talks about it, and we have now complete evidence of it. So, were you in any way told not to write, or were there any issues regarding that?
I am lucky that the incident is more than 35 years behind me. And so we are able to see it in all its detail and vividity without the, let's say, the lenses and the filters that apply when you look at an evidence firsthand. As journalists, we have the ringside to history being made. We have ringside seats. I mean, that cannot be denied. But most often, whatever we get in terms of perception is what we see and what we are told. and even though this is part of it, but we do not know what the entire picture because we do not have the materials at hand.
Yeah.
And in this case, the complete materials was made available to me. Raghuttaman that way kept the records very meticulously, and he had a very good photographic memory too. And and we kept a lot of things out of the book because he thought it was too sensitive, and it would reflect poorly on the organization that he was working. He was very loyal to the CBI, so he said, "No, I don't want these things to come out," even though he told me about it. So other than that, I don't. As I said, I got lucky that I was able to write about something that happened such a long time ago. And you know, as you know, Mr. Jalapa himself was not found in any way guilty for what happened, and he was let free early on. And even the various police officers were charged for minor offenses, not for the bigger offenses, and they served a little bit of time here and there. And all of them are, you know, like they walked away from the whatever happened without any stain in their reputation. And Jalapa himself, when he died, was over 90 years old. I think he was 95 when he died last December. And Raghuttaman himself was in his 70s when he died last May. And I doubted very much that, you know, any of the principal players are in fact there, and they are younger than what they were at that time. And you can see that most of them must have been in their 40s, 50s at that time. So 36 years on, there is not much to contest except the cold light of what the court said. I have based whatever I wrote on court judgment, on witness depositions, on CBI affidavits and CBI testimonies, the material objects that were presented before the court. And as well as a very, very sustained interaction with Raghuttaman. So I was able to bring into focus a lot of strands and bring it together in a manner that would not have been possible while the action unfolded. And while there would have been real and immense pressure to not write, and I think one of the reasons why I took up the project is that it tells you of a very bleak environment. It is not a romantic environment in which Raghuttaman functions. It is not a great environment in which the other officers function. Everybody is following orders. This is bureaucracy. Everybody is, you know, covering their backsides, if I may be permitted to use the phrase. And everybody is, the more honest of them are keeping evidence of it, what happened. And that came out in the court. That came out as a part of depositions. There were 94 prosecution witnesses for the case, and not even one defense witness. And so I think if there is richness in detailing, because there was richness in the evidences presented to the court. And I have not, not wavered from that.
I did a bit of research on this, and I found out that the courts not only let off these police officers, but the chief minister went on to the extent of saying that they will be reinstated with full pay and back pay, you know, like, so I assume, as you said, there was not even a stain on their career. So having said that, what I really liked about the book was the way it was narrated. It was there as if it opens with Rashid taking up this train journey and him getting into this hotel, and a lot of it actually happens in these two hotels that you mentioned, and that makes it very interesting. It's as if you're just sitting out there and then actually watching a movie. So how did this actually happen? Was it also because of the fact, as you said earlier, a lot of it was already there, and then did did the way you presented was to really sort of picturize these things and narrate it that way, or how is it?
I'll tell you, there were two, three different processes
You
that came in.
dramatized it.
I dramatized it. That's true. And there were two, three different processes. Number one, I heard the story from Mr. Raghuthaman, which is a bare bones
Uh,
story of what happened. He said this, I said this, he said this, I said this. And
mm,
then there were the court documents that brought in the various depositions that the other people made. And
mm,
there was the witness, there was the material objects that were presented to the case, to the court. I mean,
mm,
what kind of matchbox did Rashid use? What brand did he
mm,
smoke? What are the magazines he read?
yeah,
What was the issue of the magazine that he was reading? What was in that issue?
yeah, mm,
So every day when I uh, listened to him and came back home, it was during time of COVID when most of the work happened. So I used to go for long walks, and it kind of played out in my mind what was being said, what I was reading. And then I made a trip to Bangalore, and I visited many of these places. I had never been to Lal Bagh before, even though when I used to work in the Indian Express, I used to stay in Queens Road very often. And I've even stayed in that Hotel Akshay, which is one of the places where
okay,
Sadas goes to hide. I've
uh,
even stayed there. And it's in Cunningham Road, right opposite the police commissioner's office. And that airlines hotel, I visited the airlines hotel, looked at their menu, and ordered things from their menu, that Bangalore
mm,
bun, for instance, and the masala dosa.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I even went to the ridiculous extent of making the Bangalore bun at home, just to get the description right.
Okay,
Just to get the description right. It's
okay,
another
okay.
thing that I enjoy
Yeah,
cooking.
yeah, yeah.
But I think if you're a journalist and your book claims to be true to life, then verisimilitude is a very big thing that you need to stick to. In order for a book to feel real, it needs to smell real. It needs to give off the atmosphere of reality, and even if it has been recreated, I mean, much of it is recreation, and a lot of it is imagined recreation, but from the facts
Mm,
that are there. For example, recreating the post-mortem scene, the first one and the second one. It's all there in the court deposition. These are the wounds, these are the wounds, and these were the guys who were did the post-mortem. This is the doctor. This is what he deposed. This is the record that he made. This is the report that he gave. But how do you make it into a scene? You need to be able to present it before the reader as though he is immersed in it. He is fully participating in it, and you cannot do it without taking him or her there physically. It's
that's true. That's true. Okay. Is it the way now fiction, non-fiction is written, where you merge fiction with non-fiction while the facts remain the same? Obviously in fiction, there are no facts. There's only fiction in terms of it's sheer to storytelling. So you can actually dramatize it as much as you want. But in non-fiction, dramatizing it and with the kind of facts that you have. So the fundamental part of it remains the same, and on that you end up building this kind of a structure. But how much of it is something that you can actually dramatize? How much can you do it? And that's the second question. The first question was, is it the new way of narrative, or rather narrating nonfiction?
I think narrative nonfiction has been around for a long while. I forget when exactly the first book that I read of narrative nonfiction, let's say Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. It's a reportage. Neil Sheehan's Bright Shining Lie. He recreated Vietnam War. It's one of the most brilliant books ever written. A piece of reportage. Anything that came out of Vietnam, let's say Michael Hurst's Dispatches, or even even later books like that came out, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. It's a piece of reportage. It is based on real life, and how much of it is real, how much of it is not real is a matter of debate and the effect you are striving for. For example, whenever I talked to Mr. Raghuttaman, he had talked to the forensic experts during his investigation. So he had talked to, in fact, the first lead that he got that this was a murder and not a death by accident, as the police were claiming, was because he talked to that lady who did the second postmortem and who told Raghuttaman categorically, Mr. Raghuttaman, this is a murder. Make no mistake. So you have it. And Mr. Raghuttaman has interviewed these people. So there is not very much in the scene that I am fictionalizing, except a character or two that gives the effect and brings a cinematic element into the thing. Even though I was not there. So, there's a character who sings a Kannadasan song. I don't think that actually happened. I don't think but it sets the scene.
So my next question was, how much can you dramatize?
I mean, the whole thing is dramatized. So it's 100% dramatization. It's 100% dramatization. It is not the main difference between I'm a journalist. I deal with facts, and none of the facts stated in this book are wrong. All the fundamentals are true. All the fundamentals are true. There is nothing that I have distorted. All the elements integral to the story, what the judgments were, what the statements were, whether Ram Jethmalani came to the court and how he stood on the and how he presented himself before the judge in Coimbatore. Everything is true.
Yeah, obviously I agree with that. I'm just thinking that.
Yet, because I was not there, everything is imagined.
It's very well put. Yeah.
Simply because I was not there. But because I was not there, you cannot say that all this is untrue.
Yeah, that's true.
And
please go ahead.
So narrative nonfiction has been around for a long, long time, and it's been slow in coming to our shores. And I have, for some reason, embraced it because, if you are a journalist, what good are you if you cannot tell some stories that are of more permanent value than 300 words in paper that is forgotten the next day, and you wrap peanuts or fish around the next day,
That's true. Yeah. So now let's go back to the book itself. And when during your visits to Bangalore, did you meet people who were actually part of this entire case? In terms of, how many of them did you? And the reason why I'm saying is that you did do your research, but how many of them were actually alive? Those who were very part of that case, and apart from the two main people who actually died long ago.
What is this book about? This book is about an investigation. This book is about 3 or 4 judgments that came as a result of ongoing investigations. This book is about a situation that existed and how the investigator covered it and how the courts looked at it and what the courts came out with. And if I put them together, it's there's so much of evidence, there's so much of stuff, and then you're making it into a very small book in which none of it is incontrovertible. Rather, I mean, it is there, and you cannot reduce it any further. You have to reduce such a big bundle of reality into something that is a narrative, a story that is only, let's say, 55,000 words long or 60,000 words long. So
no, I want to know whether you actually went and met those police officers. And
no, there's no need to meet police officers. Whatever is there, I need to know is there in the judgment. It is there. The courts have said it, and the investigator has said it. He said it in the court. He have taken note of it, and he has told me he's on record. So this is not about the other people. This is about the investigator and the environment in which he found himself, and how he conducted his investigation despite the obstructions placed in front of him. So that's the straight and narrow.
About the book itself. So when I look at some of the chapters here, and when you talk about Sandhya Lodge, that's on page 41, about how Joseph and Sadashivan had posted a discreet watch on Sandhya Lodge while the morning drama was going on. So when I look at some of these, when I read some of this, I realize that it's in a lot of detail and dramatized very well and all that. And I looked at some of the press reports. I read some of the press reports at that time, and there was one press report which actually caught my attention, and it was that of India Today. And I found that the author of that article, or the reporter who actually written it, she talks about the fact that this was all made up by vested interests who actually went against the Home Minister, and the fact that his body was found somewhere, that he went to the first he went to the police station, and then he goes to the Indian Express office to report and all that. They actually what comes across is that there is no connection between Mr. Jalapa and the actual murder that took place. I mean, of course, the courts have also exonerated Jalapa, but we all know what exactly happened. But you have documentary evidence to actually nail this. But going beyond that, how do you look at the scenario, and why did so there was, they were actually at that time in the late 80s, there were two views. One was the fact that Jalapa had nothing to do with it. It was completely politicized, especially by those who instigated the lawyer community, and then who rose as one and wanted all this investigation to happen. And whatever that actually happened. How do you look at this scenario? I mean, you have documentary evidence, but beyond that, I want to know how does this come across to you as?
When you refer to that India Today report, I think as journalists, we have all been in that situation. Whoever this reporter that you are talking to must have talked to sources in the police, which suited them to say what they said, so that it comes out the way it does. I mean, I don't think the reporter had any means of verifying whether what was being told to her is absolutely correct or not. I mean, we see such a lot of spin in the papers every day. We see such a lot of spin on the TV every day. So there is no way,
Yeah.
as I said, when the incident is near you, to know what is spin and through what prism and from what angle anybody is saying. All we know is this absolute truth. If anything is there in the
Yeah.
paper, it is there because
Ah,
somebody wants it there in the manner it is there.
yeah, that's true.
I
That's true.
mean, in what way
Uh,
did this reporter, for example, vouch for the veracity of what was being told to her? There is no way.
let me read a part of this report. Let
Yeah.
me read part of this report. Um, there are flaws in the argument which lays the blame on Jalapa. If the police killed him, they would not have left the body with telltale signs of identification. Indeed, the case is far from simple. Rashid checked into Akshaya Hotel for 7 hours on August 11, while still retaining his room at Sandhya Lodge. And all he did was make 35 phone calls. Maybe he was afraid to call from Sandhya Lodge, as Sadar Sivan is a regular guest. It's also strange that Rashid accused the police of seizing his briefcase in his complaint when he had actually handed it over to the watchman of TVS Electronics, Prasad Babu, before entering the B.Ed college on August 15. He collected it from TVS on August 16. Also, Rashid could not have drafted the verbose complaint or the telegrams to central ministers and officials, which he dashed off on August 15. His English was not good enough. Detectives were examining the possibility of Sadashivan having had a hand in this. As far as Rashid's allegations of police harassment is concerned, it is possible that to hide his involvement with the shady business, he decided to attribute his torn shirt and loosened teeth to police harassment. Had Rashid been genuinely assaulted by the high ground police on August 14, he would not have gone back to them for protection 2 days later. Indeed, the events of August 16 raised the distinct possibility of a classic frame up.
Yeah. So this is what the police were saying those days, and which was discredited in court. So obviously this has come from that side, and there is no other way to look at it, because if something is there in the media, it is there to counter the other stuff that is there in the media. So most of these things is shadow boxing and shadow play that happens, that we have been a part of, that we have seen in our regular. I have covered the Ministry of External Affairs. I have covered the RNAW. I have covered the IB on Kashmir, and we see the amount of sometimes puerile nonsense that comes out in the media. And there is no way, as I said, of a reporter. Supposing somebody is covering, let's say, the RNAW, and he's getting a briefing of some operation in Balochistan that the RNAW has conducted. Somebody is telling the reporter. How does the reporter know what is true and what is not? I mean, there is in any report which is there is no sourcing, there is no attribution. In this entire thing, is there a single attribution in any of these things that has been said in India today? I doubt it. So you just accept what is being said as the gospel truth, and you present it to the readers as gospel truth.
No, my question related to the fact that you had the documentary evidence, you had court proceedings and all that. How much can you actually go by whatever they have said in terms of that evidence? Because police had their own version, CBI had, according to the police, had their own version. So how were you able to see that what you actually ended up finally writing was absolutely authentic?
It is authentic insofar as the evidences came out in the court. It is authentic insofar as the investigations that came out during the trial. Let us not forget that in this case, there were 3 other investigations that were done that were inconclusive. If you're covering things like police, intelligence agencies, Ministry of External Affairs, it's very, very difficult to vouch for your sources. That's point number 1. And point number 2 is that there is no way of verifying what they are saying is true or not, especially if they're giving you a background briefing, which is why they talk to you off the record. So nothing comes on the record. You're not able to quote anybody. You're not able to identify from where you are saying. In this instance, you refer to the briefcase, for instance. The policeman later on in court agreed that Rashid was in High Grounds police station and was being held there in terms of protective custody. So they accepted the fact that he was in the police station. And in the time that he was there in the police station, in their custody, there was no way he could have gone and deposited the briefcase elsewhere. Because he was in custody and they accepted. And they explained the injuries as being perpetrated on Rashid by Sadasivam's men. And the police even perpetrated a theory that Rashid was having an affair with Sadasivam's wife. And the Karnataka police sent an IPS officer all the way to Kerala and found that it was a complete, not true. So we deal only with facts as they have emerged in the court of law. And what this book instructively tells you is how the judiciary looks at the evidence presented before it, and what kind of evidence it chooses and what kind of evidences it chooses to ignore. What has happened in this case is a miscarriage of justice.
And do you think please go ahead.
And so it indicts the whole system, I mean, the India Today reporter is right in one sense that the letter or the telegram that was sent by Rashid to the Chief Justice, to the Home Minister Bhutta Singh, to the Chief Minister, was in fact dictated by another lawyer, Buttanna. And in that telegram, he mentions and names the Home Minister very explicitly. The Home Minister controls the police. You see, all the police did was beat him up and put him in custody in the High Grounds. The Home Minister's name is mentioned by Rashid and is carried on page 1 by the media. He disappears. It tells you of the kind of hubris in which everything functioned those days. I mean, if Raghuttaman was able to crack the case open, it's because the police did not bother to hide the evidence. They were so sure. They had already corrupted 3 investigations successfully. What was another one? And when they couldn't,
which is true.
Sabotage the investigation, the court came to their rescue.
Did you find Raghuttaman a broken man? Because I could actually visualize the last scene when actually those 2 goons actually are laughing at him as he steps into the rain from the court.
In my description, I hope I have been compassionate enough to bring out the condition that whatever the police people did, whoever did in that, were doing it because somebody ordered them to do it. And they did not have the mettle in them to countermand the order that was given to them or disrespect the order that was given to them. Which is why you have a strange situation that the guy who beat Rashid up most viciously in the police station was a fellow Malayali. And he asked him, you are a Malayali, how can you beat me up like this?
Yeah.
And all of them were, I think, following instructions. And it's a human condition, and I think it is true with other professions as well. I mean, if you see the absurdities that are detailed in this, I think you will find equivalences in any other profession.
Which is true. Yeah.
And it's so everybody.
No. Did you find him slightly very dejected, a broken man?
He was very unhappy at the way the case turned out. He could have drawn satisfaction from the fact that some of the policemen got some sentences, but he was not happy with that. And the government in Delhi changed, and the CBI priorities changed, and they didn't want to follow it up. And he was also unhappy with his parent organization for not challenging the appeal in the Supreme Court.
Okay.
He's grown up. He was the chief investigator for the Rajiv Gandhi assassination also. No, I don't think he was ecstatic at the way this case turned out, or even the way the investigations unfolded, even in the Rajiv Gandhi case. But that's another story.
Another story.
Unfortunately, I was not there. He's not there. Otherwise, maybe I could have
written that.
Could have delved into that. Yeah. Luck is not on my side on that.
Yeah. So, among the 7 books, was this the most difficult, or how did it go through for you while writing this book?
Actually, I wrote it very quickly. And it's taken a long while to publish it. And the COVID intervened, and then the markets changed, but it was a very, very difficult process to sift through the mountain of evidences. I don't think any of the judges, except for the judge that denied bail to the DCP West at that time, are highly lucid in the way they frame their thoughts and set out their arguments. They wouldn't pass. I don't think they would have passed mid-level English exam, for example, even though the judgments are written in English. But this is what we do. I was working in the English media, and I was working in an English paper, and most of the time, what I did was translate the English written by correspondence to English that a reader could follow. So the same debility is there in the judgments in terms of lack of lucidity and logic in the terms of where the arguments are made. In the arguments I came across in the Rashid case. And so it was difficult to deconstruct it and then piece it back together in a way that could make sense. So I think it went through 2 or 3 drafts on that. And but that's a process. And I enjoy the process. So it's okay.
So what's the next book that you're writing on? One of the later books has already been published.
So the next book that has got published, in fact, I have 2 books published almost at the same time. The second one is also a book of nonfiction. It is set in the district of Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu. and it's called Tuticorin, and Juggernaut is the publisher, and it's a bunch of stories that examines how the life is of normal people whose first level of contact in seeking justice with regard to the crisis they face in their life is a police station, and what happens. And I'm working on the sequel to that book right now. I've done the legwork on the sequel.
Okay. So, as a journalist, a foreign affairs editor, and then as an editor, and now author, how has been the transition for you? And you've written so many books. Not many journalists end up doing this. They might end up writing one book at most, but then you actually change your profession, so to say, and written so many books. How's been the experience, and what made you end up sort of talking to the readers, if I may say?
One thing I want to say straight away is that I've not written as many books as I would have liked to.
Okay, 7 is not good enough. Okay.
It's simply not good enough because, as a famous poet said, life is lost in the living of it. And as a journalist, by the time I became a newspaper bureaucrat, I had already written some books already, but I had found the time to set aside to write the books even when I was a journalist.
Okay.
And so so there has not been a very sharp transition, except that I don't have to see the absurdities of a newsroom anymore. I don't have to see what happens in a huge bureaucracy that determines what kind of story should go into the paper and what angle should we follow, and all that. I mean, that's the only difference. And now I have a lot more time to think through the projects that I have in hand. So that's the only difference. Otherwise, the transition has not been let's say, disruptive, because it was always there. It was there. It was there. It was there, and it was there on the side. And now it has come to the foreground. It's now in the forefront, in fact.
What kind of relationship that exists between a publisher and an author? I mean, you're a successful author, so obviously you'll find publishers ready to publish your books. But initially, how's it? I mean, I know of several people who want to be authors who have written good books, but just that they have not found the right kind of publisher. So are there any learnings from you when it comes to approaching for a new author approaching the publisher?
That's a whole separate topic that we can go into for a long time.
I understand.
For the simple reason that this book, Dead End, was espoused by the first publisher I approached, and they published my previous book. So I had no problem doing that. And the first time I pitched a non-fiction book had to do with how the government of India negotiated for the release of 4 hostages held in Iraq, which was then under American occupation, and they were Indians. I mean, it's called Anatomy of an Abduction, and Penguin published it. And I didn't have much of a difficulty finding a publisher because the story itself was so compelling. How is it that India managed to negotiate? It was all secret; not a single word of it had come out in the newspapers. And how did they manage to free the hostages after a certain ransom was paid? Now we have a stated position of not paying ransom, and it became a big media thing. And so that was not difficult getting a publisher. But my subsequent book, the one that I wrote after Dead End, was rejected by many publishers.
Oh, okay.
Was rejected by many publishers simply because they did not see merit in it, and they some of them felt it was too niche. Now I am sure, and I will be, and I am, let us say, validated by history. James Joyce got rejected by a hell of a lot of publishers.
Yeah.
I mean, the example of J.K. Rowling is even more recent and more famous because everybody knows she was rejected by a hell of a lot of publishers.
Yeah.
So I think it will be correct to say, it will be a truism to say that for every manuscript that the publisher accepts, there will be about 100 manuscripts easily that are worth more than the manuscript that they accepted. And I don't know whether publishers are or the commissioning editors are actually valid arbitrators and arbiters for taste, and who is to determine what is publishable and what is not. It is a idiosyncratic decision, and it has been proved numerous times by history.
Which is
so
true.
that is what I would like to tell people out there, that it's a difficult process, and you have to keep at it. And the hope should be that there should be more publishers, more adventurous publishers. For example, I am told that this book, Tuticorin, that has been published, I got it published first by Tamil publisher, and the publisher accepted the manuscript in less than a week, and it's a premier Tamil publisher. It is the #1 publishing house in Tamil Nadu, Kalichuvadu.
Okay.
I am told that book has gone into 3 print runs already. And and something that has been dismissed by people who politely sip tea in 5-star hotels in Delhi.
Yeah.
It happens.
That's true.
It happens.
Yeah. So before I round up the discussion, I would like to go back to the book and ask you, now that you've written the book and now that it's sort of well established that exists between the police and the politician, what are the other learnings that you can throw light on?
I think
what are the takeaways?
Yeah, so I would like to underline one word that is at the center of this book. This book is noir. I mean, it is noir in a way noir can be. It is bleak, but yet you will find people in this book behaving in a very, very sterling fashion, a very, very emulatable fashion. The character of Raghusaman is one such. He is a true hero in the sense he doesn't have a whole lot of support. You've seen how his colleagues behave when he goes to charge sheet and arrest Jalapa.
Yes. Yeah.
See how the commissioner of police in Bangalore behaves. He runs away from his office.
Yeah.
Because the real power is with some other policeman who is not even a commissioner. And yet there are people in this book. Some of the judges here are very, very strong human beings. The judge who denies bail to one of the accused. The judge who perseveres in getting the testimony from a police officer on the habeas corpus petition, which is hidden from the commissioner of police. And the CBCID person in Tamil Nadu who tries to convince Raghusaman's predecessor that this is a murder. That guy laughs it off. He said, no, he jumped off a train. So there are instances of heroism and conviction to belief that is worthy of emulation. And I think that is a great takeaway from the book.
So basically, heroes are not someone who come with a different kind of clothing, but they are like any common man who sort of stands for himself and has huge amount of self-respect.
Absolutely, and conviction of the belief,
Mm.
and have the ability to tell their superiors that they are wrong to their faces.
Mm.
And follow it. I mean, and follow it up. He organizes the food for all these people, paying out of by selling his wife jewelry.
Yeah.
I mean, who in their right senses will do that unless the man is like really convinced?
Yeah.
He was
Sure.
so he's, I think, true heroes. And I think if we look around us, everybody has got a story to tell. If you pay enough attention, there'll be a lot more stories coming out of the world that we live in than there are at present in this world. And some of it will be very heroic.
You're right. Yeah. Sure. Thank you very much for this interesting conversation. Thank you for being part of this. Thanks, Sudarshan.
Thank you, Gary.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more interesting updates.